The Corporate Counsel Show, an in-depth look at the issues facing in-house legal professionals, brought to you by Lawyers Weekly.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Corporate Counsel Show, our stream dedicated to in-house professionals right across the country. My name's Jerome Doraisamy. I'm coming to you today from Camaragal Land in Sydney, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by Kirstin Follows, who is the Executive General Manager of Australian Unity Trustees, and she's come all the way from Melbourne for this recording. Kirstin, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jerome. Pleased to be here.
Today we are talking about going from heading the law department to being the general manager and how to forge that pathway as an in-house counsel. I'm really keen to get Kirstin's take on making the move from legal counsel to business leadership and what it means to position oneself as not just the head of the law department, but in any in-house counsel role, how to position oneself from that legal title to being a business manager. Kirstin, there's a lot for us to cover here, and what it looks like, what it takes to make that vocational transition. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about your career to date, and how you came to be at Australian Unity Trustees.
Sure. Well, I came to the law later in life, so I spent quite a lot of time at university actually, and did law as my final degree. So I did my articles. I was 30 when I came to the law, worked in private practice at a law firm in Melbourne, and ended up specialising in personal injury workers' compensation for self-insured employers, and transitioned into in-house law from there. One of my clients was Coles Group Limited, and I went and worked for them in-house to look after their legal team that managed self-insured workers' compensation across the Coles Group, which became Wesfarm as well. I was there. And then I decided I actually thought I wanted to breach out from workers' compensation to see sort of what else I might be able to do and increase my experience across more corporate law. If I wanted to do that at Wesfarmers, I kind of needed to move to Perth, and I had young children at that time. I didn't want to uproot my family, so I looked elsewhere and got a job at IAG, Insurance Australia Group, and worked in there in more sort of corporate law, got some experience in that space as well. Decided I didn't really enjoy that all that much, that what I really liked doing was law that had a person at the end of it, not necessarily deals or bits of paper. And that was a really important learning for me, and I think has helped me land where I am now. So I looked around for what else there might be that would not necessarily be sort of workers' comp, but have some sort of purpose for a person. And I was really fortunate to find a role at Australian Unity in their legal team. So I started there as a general manager of legal risk and compliance and quality assurance for their aged care and their in-home health business. And that was a huge learning curve for me as well. I hadn't done risk and compliance directly before. And spent about 5 years in that role through fairly tumultuous times. I landed and the Aged Care Royal Commission started. I hadn't previously worked in aged care, so I had a lot to learn in a very short time and help support the business through that. So I think that helps to gain a lot of trust with the business when you're in those sorts of crisis situations.
Yeah.
And then COVID. So working in aged care during COVID was also massive learning curve for me, and really probably got me really entrenched in the business at that time, and then I've landed up in this new role for about 2 years now, a bit over 2 years.
Yeah, and no doubt your experience with those two fairly major events. The Aged Care Royal Commission and then the COVID pandemic has really set you up to be in the role that you're currently in. What did you learn about yourself, both personally and professionally, from having to steer the legal function through both that Aged Care Royal Commission and then through COVID? It must have been quite the learning curve.
It was a really steep learning curve, and I think after the Aged Care Royal Commission, prior to COVID hitting, as we all do, we do have development discussions, and I had flagged an interest in managing a business unit at Australian Unity, and luckily it's a very diverse business with lots of different areas. So I had flagged that as something that I would like to do if the opportunity came up. And I think working through COVID so intensely, I thought even more that, this would be something that I could do, that you're kind of thrown into doing whatever job you can to help the business when you're in those kind of circumstances. So I think it cemented that even more for me. And when the opportunity came up, I actually went into a secondment in this role first. I just said yes and jumped in.
Yeah. And just sort of zooming out a little bit, having come from private practice to then working in-house, what is it about the in-house realm that has made you want to stay, rather than jumping back to private practice or going into government or something like that? What is it about in-house legal life that has been sort of rewarding and stimulating for you?
I think for me, I made the jump when my children were probably 3 and 5 years old, and it was a time that I thought private practice was not particularly sustainable for me with young children. And I also was really grateful to get the opportunity to work in-house for a company that I had known as providing them with advice, and it felt like a natural transition into an in-house role where I could really see the impact of the advice that I would be giving, and also hopefully have an impact on how they engage with private practice and their external legal advisors, and maybe make it a little bit better for people that came after me.
Absolutely. And then leading up to the time that you assumed the role of Executive General Manager, just broadly speaking, and separate to the Royal Commission and to the pandemic, what have been the primary duties of the legal function that you were running?
Before this role, the primary duties really were to provide legal advice across a really broad array of businesses. We also at that time had disability services and a dental practice. So there were all sorts of things that I learnt, and was involved in the sale of some of those businesses and divestment, and it was very broad legal advice. It could be anything from residents in a retirement village who are having an argument to clinical incidents that might happen and doing investigations on those, and property type law as well. Yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit earlier, the importance for you in working for a business where there's a person at the end of it. And of course, aged care is a critically important sector, and it's only going to grow in its importance in the coming years with an aging population. What is it about I guess this kind of work, in aged care that really speaks to your sense of service, as a lawyer or as a professional more broadly? Why is that so what's the word I'm looking for? Why is that so, viscerally important for you?
I think what I have learnt through my career is that sticking close to my values and to purpose, and working for an organisation like Australian Unity, which has a very clear purpose, which is to enhance the wellbeing of Australians, that made my work easier and felt like I wasn't doing work. And when you can see improvements in people that are living in aged care or in retirement villages, or in my current role as a EGM of the trustees, where we work with vulnerable people every day, where you see how my team really helps the everyday life and helps them just meet basic requirements for what they need to live each day, I think that feels like you're not going to work.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. We're chatting with Kirstin Follows, and we'll be back with more right after this. So, Kirstin, you are now sitting in the role of Executive General Manager. How did this transition come about, moving out of the sort of legal function and into, this new role that you have? Was it something that you were gunning for? Was it a sort of happy accident somewhere in the middle?
I think it was probably somewhere in the middle. As I said, I had flagged my interest through sort of development discussions that working and managing a business was something that I thought would be my next step that I would like to take if the opportunity arose. I wasn't sure whether that might be in the business that I was already providing advice and support to, or whether that might be somewhere more broadly across the Australian Unity business. When the opportunity came to do a secondment in the trustees business, I thought, this is great. It's a lovely size business. It was manageable for my first toe in the water, and again really met the kind of criteria that I have personally to be working with vulnerable people and trying to improve their lives. And I always enjoy working with people that enjoy doing that as well. I think it attracts a certain type of person, and being part of a team of people like that is always just a joy.
And how have you found the transition? Has it been a bit of a shock to the system, or have you found that, given your experience in senior legal roles, that it's actually been rather seamless in that you're able to apply a lot of the legal experience and learnings that you've developed over the years to this role?
Look, I think my philosophy as in-house counsel was always to try and be part of the business, part of the leadership team, be seen as someone that was there and understood what was going on in the business. So as opposed to sort of being very separate and someone whose door they had to come and knock on. So for me, it sort of felt quite seamless, I suppose. I felt joining the leadership team of Wealth and Capital Markets, which is the business unit I work in now, was relatively seamless, because I had been in a similar, different role, but a part of that group, or sitting around that table, but in a different spot. I hadn't had a huge exposure to sort of financial services before, so there's been some steep learning for me in that sense. And the trustees business I have fitted in quite naturally, I think. And, for me, the biggest learning was around financial management, and that's where I knew I needed to sort of increase my skill set. And again, the way to do that is to lean very heavily and make good relationships with your finance team and get them to teach you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so then, separate to some of those skills that you've needed to learn, such as the financial management, what have been some of the skills that you developed as a lawyer that have, maybe put you a step or two ahead than you otherwise might have been?
Look, I think people skills and relationship building is just so important, and whether that is with your customer, or with your team, or with your peers, with executive leadership, I think the ability to have a close relationship on all those levels and be seen as someone that they can trust to come and seek your advice, but being practical and business focused in how you deliver that as an in-house counsel, I think that then makes the transition across to a business leader really quite logical in a way.
Yeah, so you're then sort of approaching this new role, in much the same way that you probably would have as, the head of the legal function, in that you're still looking to collaborate and communicate in, honest, transparent, consultative ways.
Absolutely. And I think I think if you're inquisitive and just part of your career is learning new things, I think that just comes as part of whatever role you're in. And the transition across to being the decision maker is actually quite empowering, I think, having been sort of the advisor to that and watching to see whether or not people took your advice, to be able to listen to what's going on around you and make that call is actually a lovely place to be in at this time of my career.
And what have you learned about yourself since stepping into this new role? I mean, are you finding that maybe you've got certain skills or certain strengths or talents that maybe you didn't know existed?
Well, I think when you start a new role, what you learn is what you don't know and where your gaps are, and look to the people that you're sort of arrived to lead to help you and to learn from them. And look, I think collaboration and listening to people is something that you learn as a lawyer, and I think is really it's like a superpower when you're actually leading a business, that you're not talking all the time, but you're actually listening to the team around you and figuring out what the best decisions are.
Yeah. Kirstin, one thing that's really interesting to me about this conversation with you is that in the last sort of 5 or so years, I've had a lot of conversations with GCs and CLOs about, the need to have a seat at the table and to really put forward the argument that legal needs to be in the room, when decisions are being made. And I think broadly speaking, most heads of legal that we speak to feel like that they do have that seat, which is great. But you've kind of taken it a step further in that, not only do you have the seat at the table, you're at the head of the table. Do you think that more heads of legal should be aiming for this? Not just to be in the room, but to be, directing, what's happening in the room?
I think it's something that you need to want to do. I think, I suppose a bit like barrister solicitor choice. Which one do you want to be? Do you want to be front of house or back of house? I always kind of wanted to be back of house. But I think as I've matured through myself and in my career, I've felt that confidence that perhaps I could do that too. And I think as you sort of see different people in different leadership roles, you pick up the things that you think that you could do, and then you just have to back yourself, I suppose, if the opportunity comes up, or put your hand up and say, this is something that I might be interested in if the opportunity comes up. And, I was really fortunate to be given the option of taking this on as a secondment and having a bit of a go, and I really loved it. So then I was doubly fortunate that I was then able to take it on as a permanent role, and I don't think I've looked back.
Yeah. Well, I want to circle back to your guidance for those who might want to make a similar vocational jump, and we'll get to that and more on the other side of this. So, Kirstin, when you look across the market, I'm sure you see, much the same things that I do, ongoing turbulence and uncertainty, economically, geopolitically. We obviously still have persistent inflation and cost of living concerns. Given everything we're seeing in the market around us, do you think that in-house lawyers, heads of legal, are particularly well placed to assume these kinds of senior leadership roles and help businesses steer through the persistent choppy waters?
Yeah, I think they do have those sorts of skills. I think you have to be prepared to learn new things and open up yourself to learn things that you mightn't have done before. But I think you definitely have the skills to be able to do that. But I do think you need to be somewhere where you have a real deep love of the work that you do and the kind of work that is the output of where you've been maybe advising, and that makes it's so much easier. And the work that the trustees business does, we work with people who we manage estates for people who have died, and for protected persons doing financial administration, and watching that and being part of that business in the choppy landscape where we're dealing with complex families and people with mental illness and also other disabilities, personal injury. It's kind of brought everything that I've ever done all together in a really nice place. And I think in your career, if you can figure out what are the things that you love to do and what gives you purpose as a person as well as in your career, if you can meld those two things together, you're a big winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those listening who are interested in the idea of making a similar vocational jump to yours, how can they position themselves, whether it's within their own businesses right now or just more broadly when with upskilling or networking? Are there certain ways that in-house lawyers can put themselves forward to nominate for these kinds of executive roles?
I think that you need to tell someone that you've got an interest in that.
Yeah. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get. I think you also need to look around and think, well, what's the footprint that I have here with the business that I'm currently advising? Would I be someone that they would come to if there was an opportunity or a role? And if no, then it's like, well, what do I need to do to make sure I might be that person? And does that mean I need to be a bit more practical and hands-on? What can I do to demonstrate that I would be a person that would be able to make those sort of practical decisions?
Yeah. One thing I've always sensed with the legal profession, Kirstin, is that there is a very strong sense of pride in being an admitted solicitor in whatever state or territory Supreme Court you're in. And certainly as someone who is admitted myself but no longer holds a practicing certificate, I retain a certain sense of pride in being able to call myself a lawyer, even though, it's been 10 years since I held a practicing certificate, so I'm probably not quite well placed to be able to still call myself that. But one thing I'm curious to know is whether you would still see yourself as being a lawyer, and for those who do have that sense of pride, in being a legal practitioner, do you think they can still retain that sense, if they were to assume the role of general manager or CEO or managing director? Is it still possible to feel like you're a lawyer and to be able to utilize those skills if you are working in an exec role?
Look, I think so. I do think you need to let go of that a little bit. Yeah. But I will always look at something with a legal mind, and I bring that experience and that training to the table, and sometimes I have to check myself and look at things perhaps more practically. But I think I always did that even as a legal practitioner, that I would try and put myself in the shoes of the business. So, but also admitted to the Supreme Court of Victoria. I gave up my practicing certificate when I took on this role. So, it actually wasn't that hard.
Yeah,
I did that, and I don't feel a huge sense of loss. I feel like it was. I've really enjoyed my career journey, and I'm really happy where I am now. And I think you kind of need to let that go and go, well, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So in a sense, it's an extension of sorts of the in-house counsel having to wear many hats. You're not just the lawyer; you're also a business advisor, you help. You have to manage, your team's budget and be that kind of financial manager, as well as all the other hats that in-house counsel have to wear. So is it an extension of that mindset to then being able to just think strategically as a business manager, and sometimes that includes legal?
I think so, yeah. And I think that the training of being able to step back and look at a bigger picture and hopefully sort of see where you might be getting off track. And I think that kind of training is invaluable. Yeah. You tend to have that ability to step back from whatever the fray is that's going on the particular day and be calm, especially you've been in litigation, which I was in for a long time, I think that that ability to be calm in a crisis and considered is a huge skill that has helped me immensely.
Yeah. Kirstin, just finally, before I let you go, for those listening to this episode who like the idea of making the jump up to an exec role like GM as you hold, or CEO or managing director, but they are perhaps personally or professionally uncertain or skeptical or fearful even, what kind of advice would you offer them to build that confidence to take the leap?
I think you have to really back yourself. It has to be something, one, that you really want to do. But I think you need to embrace the fear and do things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, and be authentic to yourself. So, I would describe myself as an introvert, so not naturally perhaps a effervescent leader. But I think the gift I've been given with where I'm working now is that all of those different traits are taken as gold, and that so you need to really back yourself and take the jump, really. Yeah. But stay true to who you actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirstin Follows, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to the listener for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give us a rating and review on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts, as it'll help other in-house lawyers discover and enjoy this show. And if you've got ideas for other episodes we can run, please get in touch at editor@lawyersweekly.com.au. You can also reach us on social media. See you again next time.